Welcome to Ask the Judge, a program presented by the CZ Court Reporter, a function of CZ CLEP.
My name is John Celebrezzi, and I'm the co-founder of the Celebrezzi-Zangi Community Legal Education Project, as we call it, CZ CLEP for short. Our organization provides continuing education about the judiciary and legislature to attorneys, judges, government officials, and the general public. As a career educator, I recognize early on how important legal matters are and how they impact our lives. I am the nephew of the late Anthony J. Celebrezzi, who was the popular 5-term mayor of Cleveland and a member of President Kennedy's cabinets. As a tribute to his lifetime commitment to the legal process, we dedicate this show.
John's special guest is Judge Stephen B. McIlvaine. Judge McIlvaine was appointed judge of the Wadsworth Municipal Court by then-Governor George Vornovich. In 1997, he was elected for the unexpired judicial term. He has been re-elected in 2000 and 2006. He's a faculty member of the Ohio Supreme Court, Ohio Judicial College, and currently serves on the Criminal and Law Procedure Committee for the Ohio Judicial Conference. Judge McIlvaine is also a member of the Medina County Bar Association and Association of Municipal and County Judges of Ohio.
Well, Judge, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me back.
It's been a little while, but we're always glad to see you. You talked to us on Law Talk here some time ago on a topic that I know that you spent a lot of time in your court on. That's operating vehicles under the influence, and you were very informative that day. Because of that, Judge, we took the liberty of asking you back, but this time we were wondering if you can do something a little different. Kate, our CZ reporter, has been all over and has run into an audience of young drivers. Actually, they're right in the process of taking their training at this point, and they have some questions for you. Would you be willing to answer some of those for them?
Be glad to answer some questions.
Okay, well, it is going to be on that topic because obviously that's very important to new drivers and old drivers for that matter. And as you mentioned last time you were here, that is one area of the law that has had some significant changes.
Yes, it has.
I know it keeps you on your toes all the time as far as the legislature making some adjustments there. So we have Kate Feeks with us today. Kate is our reporter for Celebrezzi-Zangi Community Legal Education Project. Kate gets out amongst the folks in the county, getting their views on the law, and as of today, coming back with some questions for you. For all of our guests, actually. Kate, welcome.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me, and Judge McIlvaine, thanks for being here. My first question for you is from Michaela.
Hi, I'm Michaela, and I was wondering if the police can stop you for no reason, and is being out from 2:30 to 3 a.m. a reason to stop?
Actually, that's a pretty good question. The quick answer is no. The police can't just stop you without a reason, okay? The police need a reasonable and articulable suspicion in order to stop a vehicle. So therefore, if they have a hunch, that's not good enough. Or they guess or think something might be going wrong, that isn't enough. They need a reasonable and articulable suspicion to stop. Now, to meet that standard, the police officer who is seeking to justify an investigatory stop must demonstrate specific and articulable facts which, taken together with other rational inferences, would support his position. Now, when I say articular, that just means he has to be able to express them. When he goes to court, he has to be able to put in words what the facts were.
Yeah.
And if you take all the facts together and the inferences drawn from those, would that be would a reasonable person use that to support a stop?
Okay.
And also, an officer doesn't have to think about other reasons. For example, you might say, well, if someone's weaving, maybe there's a pothole. It has nothing to do with alcohol. They had to avoid a pothole. Or there was a mechanical problem. That would justify a car weaving. But the police officer doesn't have to look into that. If what they observe could be related to an alcohol offense or could be a violation, that's reason to stop. Okay, so it doesn't have to support a conviction. Now, having said that, let me give you the bad news. The United States Supreme Court in State versus Wren, that's WHREN, made a ruling that any violation of a traffic law, no matter how de minimis or no matter how minor, is reasonable and articulable suspicion to stop. So therefore, if someone is speeding, you can stop them. Now, when they say speeding, that's anything. You can say speed limit is 35 miles per hour. You and I both know that if you're going 37, police aren't going to stop you and give you a speeding ticket. But if you're going 37 in a 35 mile per hour zone, that is speeding. And that would be justification to stop your vehicle.
I see.
Okay? Because it's any violation of a traffic law. So therefore, left to center. In Wadsworth, we have an ordinance, no weaving within a lane. That's common use. Cracked windshield. So even a safety violation, you have a cracked windshield, or you don't have, which is used often, there's no light illuminating your license plate.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the
That's
classic
the
one,
standard.
the license plate light.
All of those are proper reasons. So it does, as you can see, it really doesn't take much to substantiate a stop.
Okay.
But being out at 2:30 in the morning is not reasonable and articulable suspicion to stop. So once the police stop you, then they're in a position they're allowed to be, and then they're off and running. Odor, what their observations of bloodshot eyes. But so they do need reason to stop, but as you can see, it doesn't take a whole lot.
That's a good question.
Very
Excellent
good.
question, Michaela. Okay, what else you got? Kate,
Okay, the
another
next-
question for the judge?
Yes, the next student I have is Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm wondering, if you get stopped for an OVI, can the police search your car?
That's another good question. When we're talking about searches, search and seizures, basically you think of the Fourth Amendment, that we're protected in our property, that we're safe from unreasonable intrusions. Okay. First thing you think about is in a house. Okay. You know, a house is your castle.
Sure.
So you require for the police to come in there, they need a search warrant. Okay. You can't just commit. Well, there's exceptions, but the basic premise is you need a search warrant. Well, then you apply that to automobiles. Well, the difference. Think about the difference between an automobile and a home. An automobile is mobile. You know, if you want to get a search warrant for a house, the house is going to be there while you go find a judge, get a search warrant, and come back. Okay?
Car won't.
A car won't. It's going to drive away.
Right.
So there are exceptions with motor vehicles. And some of those is if the police have probable cause to search, then they can do so without a warrant. Okay, so though, what's probable cause?
Yeah. What is it?
If the police are standing there talking to you and they see something, let's say they see narcotics or a weapon in plain sight in the automobile, probable cause.
Probable cause, okay.
You come down the road on the way and they get a strong odor of marijuana, probable cause to inquire further and search the car. For officer safety, they can have occupants out to search them for weapons.
I see.
Probably the one that comes up most is the dog. Can the dog justify a search? Well, here's what happens. For example, in Wadsworth, we have a canine unit. Most police departments have canine units now. And for example, in Wadsworth, the canine unit is on duty. The officer's out driving, patrolling like all the other ones. And they just monitor the radio. So if someone makes a stop, the canine officer hears that. So the other officer may or may not call specifically the canine unit to that stop, but the canine unit's just going to stop. And as long as the original officer who stopped the vehicle doesn't delay the stop unnecessarily, you can walk the dog around. For example, like if you stop him for speeding, as long as the officer is still doing his normal speeding, whether he's running the leads or writing out the ticket, if the other officer can get there and walk the dog around the outside within that time period, that's not an unnecessary delay.
I see.
That's proper.
That's interesting.
What you can't do is say, you need to wait here while we call the dog and wait 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes while the dog gets here. That would be delaying it, okay? But what happens is the dog gets there, and if the dog walks around the outside and alerts, that's probable cause to search. Because there's no expectation of privacy around the outside of the car.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of what most kids want to know. You know, hey, is that right? Well, that's proper. Also, the driver or the occupant can give consent. So if the police say, "Do you mind if I search the car?" Well, if you say yes, you've just given consent. They don't need anything else. Okay.
Well, Alex, I think touched on a pretty good constitutional issue, didn't there, Judge? That's Fourth Amendment, and this coming right from the Supreme Court of the United States.
And as you know, obviously there's volumes written on search and seizures.
Sure.
So the little bit we talked about today just kind of gives you an idea
Sure.
of, that they need more than, again, they need some probable cause. They can't just search it because they want to search it, but there are ways that would allow them to do that.
Yeah, the dog aspect's very interesting too.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as there's no delay, and
that's the key.
And most municipalities do have a K9 unit. Now that's not atypical at all. I mean, you
That's
see them
correct.
in the back of police cars. So. Good one, Alex.
Yeah, very
excellent,
good.
excellent
Yeah,
question.
good question.
Excellent question.
Okay.
Kate, what else you got?
Next we have Becca.
Hi, I'm Becca, and I was wondering, is someone legally required to perform the standard field sobriety test?
Okay, the standard field sobriety test, there's basically three of them. That's the horizontal gaze and nystagmus test, the leg stand, and the walking, or the heel to toe. And the quick answer, are you legally required to do it? The answer is no. There is no legal obligation to take the standard field sobriety test. So when they say the horizontal gaze and nystagmus, that's where the officer will have you stand in front of them, hold your head still, and they'll use a pen or stimulus, hold it about 12 to 14 inches away from your eye, slightly above eye level, and they'll move it to the right and the left. And you're supposed to follow it just with your eyes. Everyone has a natural nystagmus, that your eye jerks. Alcohol enhances it. Normally, it's not visible. Like you and I, we're not drinking. If you moved your eyes, I'm not going to be able to see your nystagmus. If you consume alcohol, it accelerates or magnifies that effect. Okay? And the police have to do it a certain way. Same thing with the one-leg stand. If you stand on one leg, they have you raise one leg 6 inches off the ground, put your arms down, and count 1001, 1002, 1003, up to 1030. Walk the straight line. They have you stand in a position with one leg in front of the other, and they tell you to walk down either a real line or imaginary line. 9 steps, going heel to toe, pivot with small steps, and back, counting out loud the whole time. The one thing you have to realize, these are all what they call divided attention skills. Because if you ask someone to just count, you can count whether you're drinking or not.
Sure.
Okay? But if you have someone who's been drinking to count, remember to walk, heel to toe, hands down to your side.
I see.
It's a divided
so it's all
attention. It's
together.
multiple things, and that's where the study is. Now, as I said, there's no legal obligation to take those. But let's talk about it. The police are going to use those to determine whether or not, to help them determine whether or not they have probable cause to arrest you.
Sure.
So, as a practical matter, and the concept is, if you do not take those tests, and they think they have an odor and maybe glassy eyes, bloodshot eyes, if they're going to ask you to take this. If you don't take them, they're probably going to just arrest you and take you down to the station and actually take a breathalyzer.
Yeah.
Okay. If you take the test and fail them, they're going to arrest you and take you down to the
station.
Now, if you take them and you pass, then it's very possible they're not going to arrest you and they'll let you go home.
I see.
Okay, that's the concept. Now, the kids are going to ask me, Becca might say, okay, Judge, has anyone ever passed these? Because these are very subjective.
Yeah.
There's no, the police are going to say, well, I observed this or I observed that. Well, I don't know if I can answer that, because if they pass them and they don't charge them, there's no case in front of me to
Yeah,
explore.
that's a good point, Judge. You never met these people, don't you? Yeah, that's true. That's pretty obvious.
Now, I will say this. Recently, there was a case that got a lot of publicity in my court. A young man was charged with wearing a gorilla suit early in the mornings, riding an ATV. Okay, got a lot of publicity. But here's the interesting thing. It was like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and the gentleman had been drinking. He was not charged with OVI. Okay, because the police conducted various tests, and they said he was not under the influence of alcohol, so he must have passed.
Yeah.
So with that wasn't there was no direct testimony to that, but so I suppose some people can. So he had consumed something. I guess he was a bartender, and this was after shift, so he smelled, but he was not under the influence. So I suppose that happens. But that's the concept. But there is no legal requirement, but there could be ramifications if you don't take it.
I see.
Okay.
Another
So just be aware of that.
excellent question there.
Right.
Okay.
Very good.